structures, elected officials, things that you're going to be seeing on the ballot. And we want to just normalize that, normalize voting. We can no longer sit on the sidelines and pretend like the house isn't on fire around us. So we want to galvanize ourselves together to talk about and learn and discuss and just have an open forum about what's happening around us and what ways we can empower ourselves by being more knowledgeable when we go to these polling stations, or like we're going to be talking about today, perhaps voting at our house, mailing that in. What does that mean? So tonight we're going to be discussing mail-in voting, the whole shit show with the USPS, what is going on. We're going to be a little bit out of order tonight just because we've got our dear Ross, who actually works with Mayor Garcetti, and Mayor Garcetti is actually going to be on the the Democratic Convention tonight, so he's going to be speaking. So it's just very busy, as you can imagine. He's got his hands full, so we definitely want to let Ross go ahead and slide out as soon as he presents his information that he has for us tonight. He is a busy guy, and we always appreciate the time that he takes out of his very busy schedule, I'm not over-exaggerating, to be here with us and to walk us hand in hand through this, because he does this, all right? He does this. We don't. So we're here to learn more, and he really helps and facilitates that. So thanks again, Ross. Please take the floor.
Oh, please, guys. I love doing this, and like I'm learning just as much as you all are every single week. So this is so great. But like Carmen said, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm like phoning it in a little bit this week just because it's been crazy. But this is such an important issue. I didn't want to miss it. But the Democratic National Convention is also so great, and like we've been loving it, and we've been watching it, we've been doing it, and we're going to see what the Republicans do next week. See how they respond to what the Democrats are doing. So it's going to be a very interesting couple of weeks here. Lots to talk about. Maybe we can do a recap next week. Who knows? So we've all kind of seen the drama unfold with the USPS and our Postmaster General and Congress and Trump and what's going on. And like, we've seen the viral photos of blue boxes stacked up on the corners, and like, why is this all happening? So just like a really brief timeline. Back in May, DeJoy, who is our Postmaster General, Louis DeJoy, was appointed by Donald Trump to be the Postmaster General. He formerly was the chairman of the Republican National Convention. He was the finance chairman of the Republicans' version of what is happening right now on the Democratic side. And he was for the 2020, not like 2016, not 2012, 2008, 2020. He's a former mega Trump donor. He organized $1.2 million be donated to the Trump Victory Fund. So he's a Trump guy through and through. And so Donald Trump's been talking about, as we all know, since he was elected, mail-in voting fraud and how fraudulent it is, even though that's just strictly not a thing. It's completely unfounded. But he's been talking about it since he has been elected. So he put his guy in the top dog spot. He actually put his guys in every single spot. The USPS has this thing called the Board of Governors, like a lot of agencies do, like they're kind of board. And every single one of them has been replaced with a Trump appointee since Trump's been elected. The most recent one being Louis DeJoy. Another one, his name is Robert Duncan, was so much of a Trump guy. He was actually the chairman of the Republican National Committee. So if you know the Democrat guy, bald dude, Tom Perez, you might have seen his face around. Like, he's that guy for the Republicans back 2007 to 2009. So there's just like deep bench Republican people all over the USPS right now. So back to current day. In May of last year, dude is appointed. June, he takes over, quits his RNC chairman job. Day 2 of his job, so like June 19th or something, he starts decommissioning mail sorting machines that are capable of sorting 30,000 pieces of mail an hour, machines that would take 3 employees their entire shift to sort. He gets rid of hundreds of those. hundreds. And they are specifically in urban focused areas across the country. Houston, Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, places where Democrats vote en masse, places where Black and brown people vote en masse. He is eliminating mail sorting machines, stacking those blue boxes. And he also is committed to doing, coincidentally, doing these in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Florida. 4 states that went for Trump in 2016, where in-person voting outweighed mail-in voting. He's getting rid of them. Because why? Democratic voters tend to vote more by mail than Republican voters do. So he gets rid of them. It largely goes unnoticed. And until this year, no one really raised any flags about it until a couple months ago, where it starts being brought up like, hey, what's this guy that you appointed? What's he doing? Trump says he hasn't spoken to him. He doesn't know anything about it, until August of this year. I think August 4th, so just like 2 weeks ago, Trump goes on Fox News and says, where's that fun quote? He says that they need $25 billion to get the mail-in voting, that they need $25 billion to fund the post office in a way that will allow for all the mail-in voting that they want. They need 2 line items to be able to do that. If they don't get those mail-in line items, then they're not voting. He says that on Fox News. He says the quiet part out loud. He basically admits the Democrats, which the Democrats are trying to vote on, and they're going to come back. I'll get to that in a second. They want $25 billion to fund the post office to levels which the post office will need to handle the maximum capacity, the overflow that we're expecting to see because of the pandemic that we've all been living through for the past nearly 6 months. So he just says, if they don't get those line items, then they can't do it. Oh, well, because he knows the more people vote, the more likely he is to lose. So that obviously raised some eyebrows. That's when stuff really ticked up on the social medias. And then we all started seeing those viral videos. We all started seeing those photos. People started digging a little bit more. And but then we all saw last week the House and the Senate failed to reach an agreement on COVID relief for the people, another stimulus bill. So they all went home, which sucked. I don't care. Democrat, Republican, you suck. You failed. That's bad. So they all went home. They went on vacation. Until this past weekend, people are freaking out, calling their reps, calling their senators. We all did our jobs. And Nancy Pelosi says, I'm calling the House back into emergency session so that we can vote on this $25 billion of relief. And also call this Louis DeJoy guy up and be like, hey, you're going to come talk to us. Pretty quickly, Louis DeJoy, who's just a dude that suddenly is very much in the spotlight, folded. I mean, people are outside his house in mass. It's like a whole thing. And he just is like, okay, I'm sorry. On Tuesday, he sent a letter to Nancy Pelosi and to the House Oversight Committee. He's like, I'm done. I'm sorry. I don't even want to appear like I'm affecting any elections. So I apologize. I will stop. He spoke with Nancy Pelosi that day and said that he admitted, frankly, no, I don't have any plans to implement new voting machines. I don't have any plans to replace the blue boxes that we took away. I don't have any plans to reallocate the routes that have been smushed together. I don't have any plans to compensate the overtime. So even though he's stopping, he still is saying, anything I already did, I'm not going to undo. So Nancy Pelosi is like, cool, not good enough. Chuck Schumer said, cool, not good enough. So he will be testifying before the House on Monday of next week. And Ron Johnson, who is a Republican senator from Wyoming, is calling the Postmaster General to testify before the Senate this Friday. This sent our favorite president into an absolute tailspin today. He received these letters today. The Postmaster General did, not Trump. Trump was like, oh my God, I cannot believe that they would, here it is. Why are Republicans allowing the Democrats to have a ridiculous post office hearings on Saturday and Monday just before and during our convention? They should be doing it during their convention or after our convention is all over, always playing right into their hands at Send Madge Leader. So he added Mitch McConnell, which is great. So basically he's pissed because the Democrats are going to get through I'm trying very hard to be nonpartisan. It's not easy for me. The Democrats are going to get through their convention, get all the coverage they want. And then on Friday, when the convention's over, we will turn immediately to the Senate's testimony of Louis DeJoy in the Senate for like what the fuck he's done. And then again on Monday. So the weekend coverage will be it won't be like leading up to the Republican National Convention. It'll just be like all what Louis DeJoy said and then all what Louis DeJoy is saying. And then Donald Trump, here's your convention. So he's pissed and it's great. But what Ron Johnson said, their senator, he was like, well, I just want a chance for Louis DeJoy to like plead his case before the American people before Monday's sham trial that the Nancy Pelosi and the liberal left is going to hold. So that's like the way he's spinning it. I just love to see them in meltdown mode no matter what. I think it's great. Garcetti's on TV right now. But that's me. That's great. That's it. I have to bail. Thank you so much. You guys are lovely. And Carmen and Kyle, back to you.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you. I love it. That was amazing. But he's a busy guy. You know, we've got big people, big players on our team here. So you know how that goes. I'm gonna go ahead and just jump into my segment where I'm just kind of giving you the overall. He kind of dove into specific names and I guess this would be a hearing, a trial of sorts that the postmaster will be going to and being questioned about these really interesting things that are going on and why they're going on behind our, in the post office while, we're leading up to our election. So that's pretty much what Ross was talking about. I'm going to pretty much cover about what is going on. He touched on some points of mine, but hopefully I can give you all a little bit more insight. My heading is USPS mail-in voting shit show. That is what I'm covering right now. So obviously we're in a global pandemic, clearly, and what that means for an election year is that we're obviously going to want to be voting more, in mail-in votes, right? Duh, makes sense. So earlier this summer, the U.S. Postal Service told states that it may not be able to meet the deadlines for receiving and counting ballots because they were already delayed. Again, because we're in a pandemic, we were already having trouble getting our mail on time. So this has obviously, been heightened. So apparently states are unable to change or can't change or whatever the deadlines to request and to request ballots. And so people are just going to have to mail their ballots in early. So the USPS sent out to the states, hey, just FYI, we're getting, into the fall. This is earlier in the summer that, we don't know what the situation is really going to be about because we're already struggling to keep up with the demands during this pandemic. Everybody's at home. We're having to send everything, blah, blah, blah. So that was happening. And then, so it's coupled with the USPS is already strained because of our pandemic. And then you have Trump now who is opposed to bailing out the Postal Service in order to handle the surge of ballots that inevitably is going to be coming their way. He also, as we all see, continues to, speak falsehoods, essentially, about mail-in voting, like fraud. And even though the evidence shows that, voter fraud is extremely low and extremely rare, and it's been compared to the likelihood of getting struck by lightning. So it's something that, sure, yeah, it happens, but I mean, not enough to just completely not allow it to go down. He's been quoted as saying it would be one of the greatest frauds in history, and even likened Biden's campaign to that of sabotage. Currently, as Ross was speaking to, the Democrats are pushing for he was throwing out, like, I don't know if he said 25 billion or 25 million. I didn't really hear him, but the number I kept saying was 2.5 billion and 3.5 billion. So those are the numbers that I've seen going around. But the Democrats are pushing for this bill, for this bailout that would provide, that would be provided within a COVID-19 relief bill if it was approved by the Congress and the White House, and this would help to alleviate the pressures that the UPS faces in order to accommodate mail-in voting. Let's see. Also, this bill includes, I believe, a requirement that states would mail in absentee ballots to registered voters. So it's like a whole complete bill that they have presented for Congress, but, you know, of course, we're waiting for that to pass. Something that I was looking at as well is that USPS is actually not funded by taxpayer money. So this is all like governmental stuff. It's all like a federal situation. Sorry, my notes are kind of all over the place. So as Ross was stating, that recently these huge machines have been removed from our postal services in general. They just have been removed. It would be called like the decommissioning of the ballot counting machines, but they also count flat mail, like regular letters, but they have been removed in recent times. And this was from the USPS. They released like a statement or just kind of explaining it. They said that they actually need more space and they actually go through more larger packages. So, you know, these large machines, which they can count up to 23 million pieces of mail per day. Okay, so they needed to remove those to accommodate these larger packages that are more of a priority, right? Because not everybody's getting sent handwritten letters, you know, so let's remove those. And then that way we can accommodate for our larger packages that just takes up more space, it's more efficient, and whatever. However, there has been some postal workers that disagree. They actually filed a formal grievance that these machines only take up about 10% of the capacity, and, you know, the warehouses or postal air, like, I don't know what these things are called, but, you know, the postal service, the mail rooms, you know, that type of thing. They only count up for about 10% of the capacity, so it just doesn't make sense if it's only 10% and they can do, like how Ross said, they do the amount of work that it would take for 3 employees to do in a day. Again, about 23 million pieces of mail. So think about how that would be taking offline would obviously affect our ballot counting. I mean, that's obviously our solution, right? So without those, we will not be able to vote by mail. It seems impossible without these machines. So this is why this has become such at the level that it is, and such a heightened and hot topic, if you will, because it greatly affects our democracy, plain and simple. Trump also continues to warn of the catastrophe for him. Let's be plain and simple. It would be a catastrophe for him, of universal mail-in voting, which by definition upholds and promotes integrity and full representation within our democracy. It requires that all eligible citizens to vote, and therefore voting would be more accessible if we utilize universal voting. So it would be a catastrophe for him because we know how he didn't win by the popular vote. So if we all were required as eligible voting citizens to vote, that most likely, when we're looking at statistics and looking at what happened in the last election, would not turn out very well for him. So he is not into this situation. So although universal voting, as I've described by its definition, he says that it would actually be a threat to our democracy. So as we've seen in our very traumatic 4 years of facts and then something that our president says, and they do not go together. So we are confronted with conflicting information yet again. Currently, there are 9 states plus DC that plan to hold universal mail-in elections in which the ballots are automatically mailed to all registered voters without needing to request one. So currently, in order to mail in your vote, you have to request a ballot. So I don't know, I'm sure we've all seen, things going around. Make sure to request your mail-in ballot early so that way you can send it in early, blah, blah, blah. So, by these states automatically doing this, nobody will have to request it. You'll just get one in the mail. I'm sure there are extra details within that, but it obviously alleviates some work and pressure for the everyday American to have to just vote, especially during a pandemic. Experts say it's unlikely many more states will make the switch just because we're close to election times. And Trump has also hinted or suggested that without delay, so he's hinted that we could either just delay the election, right? Because if mail-in voting is our only choice and it's the thing that makes the most sense, then why don't we just postpone the election so that way we can properly, securely, and safely vote? Or we just need to redo the election. We just need to redo the vote because it's going to be off. He is for certain it is going to be just awful, just bad if we do this. But however, he does support absentee voting, which is a mail-in voting situation that's offered to people who aren't able to vote in person on election day. So it's like for people in the military or seniors or people with disabilities. The states that are currently offering this universal vote by mail is Colorado, Hawaii, Oregon, Utah, Washington. They actually were doing it before this year. And to include this year is going to be California, Nevada, Vermont, New Jersey, and I believe DC also signed on as well for this year. While Montana, North Dakota, and Nebraska will allow individual counties to decide whether to mail ballots in to all registered voters. So they're letting the counties decide. That's Montana, North Dakota, and Nebraska. Just to wrap up, obviously this is a national, we're voting for our president, but the counties really decide a lot of this. And so to get your most up-to-date information about what is going to be specific for you and in your county, you'll need to go to your county election offices, in person, or I don't even know if it's open. So obviously check online. But because of our situation, just again, with the pandemic, polling stations can even be changing, days before, of course, we're seeing lots of polling stations close down. So things are moving very fastly. They're moving rapidly. And if we aren't really paying attention, we can really miss out on voting. So, suppression is obviously at an all-time high, as we're seeing in front of our faces that it's happening. So make sure it doesn't happen to you by being up to date with what's going on in your county. And that's all I got. Thank you. I'm going to pass it on over to Kyle, who's going to give us a little bit more detail just about this whole postmaster situation, voting in mail 101, just the whole breakdown of who controls what within the USPS. Like, what's going on, Kyle? Speak to the people.
Oh, if only I actually knew. One thing I wanted to add, Carmen, is I was just looking this up because I saw a lot of conflicting information on whether or not you needed a stamp for your mail-in ballot. What I'm seeing is they'll, even if you don't have the correct stamp or however many stamps, that they'll still take it. But I honestly am just terrified enough to say, put on 27 stamps if you can, because who knows. But apparently they will take the ballot no matter if you have the postage. I've just been seeing a lot of things on Instagram that are like, if you don't have this, it will not be taken, which, I mean, there's so many regulations at this point. Who knows? But okay, so this is sort of like a brief history and overhaul on the Postmaster General, which is what we've been discussing, is this Leo guy, Louis guy, Louis DeJoy. But I was unaware that this was even a position before all of this. So I was really interested to see how powerful actually these people are. So the United States Postmaster General is the executive chief officer of the USPS. and he's nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. And so our current, and he is allowed to serve. So once they are appointed, they serve however long of a term. It doesn't matter if it changes over presidencies, because they are supposed to be bipartisan. And the only way they can really be removed is if they resign, or I guess if they're fired. So the current Postmaster General, as we said, is Louis DeJoy, and he took office on June 15th. And he took over for a really incredible postmaster who I'm going to talk to you guys about later, because he resigned actually in May, and it was very interesting to read about him and why that all happened, because I had no idea about it, to be quite honest. Okay. So the Postmaster General runs the Postal Service just as a CEO does of a major corporation. In a nutshell, basically their duties include everything from managing and hiring to like the price of stamps. Once they're a part of the presidential cabinet, they basically after that, it becomes its own entity. So the Postmaster General and the deputies underneath it, they become their own entity within the federal government. The Postmaster General is responsible for more than 500,000 employees, which is insane. So think of him as one of the largest CEOs of one of the largest companies in America right now. So a lot of their daily business has to go with like incoming and outgoing mail and figuring out how to service that, which is things that Carm was talking about with the new machines, a regulation of postal rates, and this can be super aggravating, I guess, because many people get angry when postal rates rise. I don't know if everybody's ever remembers like when the forever stamps came out, and then you needed like a 2-cent stamp on top of the forever, you know what I mean? So a lot of these, that's the other thing that I'm finding, is a lot of the things that the Postmaster General does now was way more important back when we were so reliant on the Postal Service. And a lot of like their job descriptions are not obsolete, but it is becoming, they are sort of becoming less important, I would say. Okay, they're also, which is something why they need to be bipartisan, is they are the liaison between the public and the government on everything related to the Postal Service, which is why it's so interesting that at first he never wanted to testify and he didn't want to talk about it, because that's literally the most important part of his job, is to talk about what's going on within the Postal Service to the government for the people. And like he's supposed to be the one who comes out and talks to all of us and explains the laws and the regulations and the different changes to the Postal Service, which in the past has been done by Postmaster Generals. Like this is, I mean, he's new, yeah, but like he's literally not done anything they're supposed to do yet, which is really aggravating and disheartening. But am I surprised? Absolutely not. He's also required to oversee the hiring and firing of employees. So that can mean anywhere from like firing entire sectors to hiring and firing the hires up. So that's the other thing that's really scary, is that this person that's supposed to be bipartisan is in this position where he is not, and he is in control of putting people in power and taking people away from their jobs, especially in a time where people need them more than ever. He has the responsibility of making sure that all employees receive their benefits. This is also something really scary. And I was reading on a couple union websites that they're really terrified that he's going to manipulate the benefits received because of COVID. So like, sick pay and making sure that people's routes might be shorter, things like that. he's overseeing all of that stuff, which is just another like, what the fuck. So when you think of it, like what Go was saying, it's run sort of like a big corporation, but while it's run by a big corporation, the employees make government wages and receive federal employee benefits. And they're working as in the post office is like a really good job, you know what I mean? And at the end, you receive health insurance benefits, you receive a nice life insurance benefit, pension, retirement, sort of similar to like what cops receive in a way, not nearly as much, which they probably should receive more, but it's a really amazing job for a person to have. And that's why when people go into the Postal Service, it's a job they have for life. So the other interesting thing is the Postmaster General's current salary is a lot of money. There isn't any record of what the current one is, like what Louis DeJoy. Sorry, I know this guy from New Orleans with last name DeJesus, and I keep wanting to call Louis DeJesus, so that's why I keep slipping up his name. But in 2008, the Postmaster General made anywhere from $200,000 a year to $275,000 a year. And that's without all of his perks. So he's making a lot of money. So now we're going to talk about the Postmaster General who was before DeJoy. So this guy, his name was John E. Oh, sorry. Take it back. I wanted to talk really quick about this and the power of previous postmasters, because they usually serve anywhere between like 9 and 15 years. They serve for a very long time. A lot of them have been in a position of service or within government for like 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So they live a life of public service, if you will. But in 2009, this guy was this Postmaster General, John E. Potter, who had been serving in the position since 2011, imposed a salary freeze on himself and all USPS executives, citing the serious losses for the post office was experiencing from day-to-day operations. The USPS is facing increased competition from private delivery services. This was back when like USPS was really kicking into high gear, FedEx was coming into its own, and like we were all really getting used to like our email and business correspondence being through email. And what he did was he recognized the fact that, which is such a crazy thing to think, that this is a person who's at the top of a major corporation. That's what I keep trying to like put that perspective. And he decided to freeze his salary and all of the execs so that the USPS could pay their employees, which is insane because it's underneath it's a part of the federal government. It's insane because there's humanity involved in it, which I just think we normally don't get to see. And that when the USPS is led by somebody who actually cares, which has been in effect for, I would say, at least the past 15 years, that they do amazing things for their employees. So we're gonna talk about like the history. Oh, he was in office for 9 to 11 years, and he was appointed by Bush. So once again, Republican president appointed a bipartisan leader. So it doesn't mean, I think that's also something to remember, is that like Trump is not Republican. Trump is like a crazy other entity. And that when, obviously I'm not like touting Bush as like, yay, but I am saying that this is supposed to be a position that is separate from Democrat and Republican. So the Postmaster General is basically one of the oldest positions in government. It's like the first person who ever held the position was Benjamin Franklin, to give you a sort of read. It like basically even before the Constitution, there was a postmaster general. So it's got a huge long legacy. So then cut to forward the 1970s, and that was when the post office department became the USPS, and it became a special agency which was no longer influenced by the executive branch. So by changing, they broke away from the executive branch, and they revamped the post office, voiding the United States Postmaster General membership of the cabinet, as well as being in the presidential procession. In other words, the Postmaster General used to be one of like the president's lackeys, and then because the post office, they're such G's, they were just like, no, we want to be our own separate entity. They've got 9 unions, 4 of which make major decisions, and they essentially seceded from our own fucking government, which is so rad. And just so you know, the executive branch, so what the executive branch is, because I always like to remind myself of this stuff because it's stuff that we've learned in high school that I don't necessarily think I remember. But so the executive branch is the president is responsible for implementing and enforcing the laws written by Congress, and to that end appoints the heads of federal agencies, including the cabinet. The vice president is also a part of the executive branch. So we know that, so cabinet, federal agencies, vice president, all a part of the executive branch. So now, post office, no longer a part of that. Okay, so I'm gonna briefly touch on unions, and then we'll get a little bit more into that. But there are, like I said, 4 major unions within the USPS. There are 9 altogether, and they have, so when a in, let's see, in 2009, and then I think again in 2015, when the Postmaster General was thinking about resigning, there became this big uproar because what they felt like was whoever took over was going to privatize the USPS. And they created petitions, demonstrations. They had a national advertising campaign called the U.S. Mail is Not for Sale. And this was sort of like in 2018. And the fear of that becoming a privatized organization, meaning like an Amazon or whatever, which they would be crushed, became even more like possible once Trump came into presidency, because they felt immediately they were going to be under fire. So that's what you also have to remember, is that the people who were in power with the USPS, like as soon as Trump came into office, this is like 3.5 years ago, they were already nervous. So everything that we're hearing now has been embedded within their community since day one. And it's crazy that we didn't know more about it. And it's also insane because they knew this shit was going to happen. So this guy who's like, he reports on a lot of like the union workers in the Postal Service, said the Postmaster General has an awful lot to do with the well-being of the public institution of the United States Postal Office. A new PMG, Postmaster General, cannot decide to sell the post office, but can they set it up to be sold? Can they undermine it? Can they put in policy that would ripen it for privatization? And the answer is yes. In other words, not a Postmaster General itself can't sell the USPS to become privatized, but a president can put in somebody who's like his bro to get it done and to start the process. And then he can appeal to the president, and that can happen. So it's got to be like a joint sort of decision. So our last Postmaster General before DeJoy was this rad dude. His name was General Ronald Strawman. And he was Postmaster General for 9 years. He has more than 40 years experience in the federal government. And he was really notable chairman of the USPS board. And he decided he was going to send in his resignation in May. And the announcement came days after the board announced Louis DeJoy as its pick for Postmaster General. So he had sort of like had the grumblings and then heard that he was going to be replaced by this dude and was like, forget this. The week before, former USPS Inspector General and Vice President of the board, David Williams, announced his resignation as well. So this is the other thing. Like back in May, these major dudes were sending in their resignations left and right because they knew they were getting pushed out, essentially. So then it came out later on that Strawman, the really amazing old Postmaster General, was forced out of his position, throwing the leadership of the U.S. Postal Service into further chaos as the agency faces politically catastrophic financial crisis and efforts by Trump's administration's officials to impose draconian changes on the nation's most popular government institution. That's the other thing, is like the USPS is so major within the government and we don't give it enough credit. It is such a like huge important part. And it's just like when you think about police unions, it's like unions are huge and they're like people on the ground, right? And it's like these large communities. So when you think about how many postal unions is, it just sort of magnifies what's going on. So days before they publicly announced the decision to appoint DeJoy, that's when news broke about David Williams, the vice chair of the board, resigning. And this guy who's like the same guy who I was quoting earlier, who's like such a great reporter, was saying that David Williams, his resignation is so distressing because nobody is more knowledgeable about the inner workings of the Postal Service than David Williams. He was the longtime Inspector General who wrote the famous white paper in 2014 arguing the return of postal banking. And he was saying, worst of all, my sources indicate that this was a resignation in protest of Donald Trump. Williams was reportedly upset at the Trump Treasury Department's efforts to congressionally approve $10 billion loan to force significant changes to USPS operations. In other words, like to do sort of what they're doing now. They were gonna like dump money in to like take people out, in other words. And then what he also thought was that they were going to use that loan as leverage to give the administration influence over how much agency charges for delivering packages and how it manages its finance. So, in other words, they were going to give all this money to the USPS, right, to take all these people out and then to up the charges to basically like tank the USPS. So it does it on its own. So we choose to use FedEx. We choose to use Amazon or whatever to send anything because the USPS the prices are so high, which is like, what? That's like, isn't that like treason or something? I mean, treason is more like pirates to me, but you know what I mean? Like this sounds like some pirate shit. Like small amount about the American Postal Workers Union. It's called APWU, and you guys should, if you have a chance, I'll put it in the weekly email to go on the site and just take a look at it, because it really pulls at your heartstrings right now. They have a lot of like testimonials, and it's very open and vocal about what they're going through. And it's insane. And I mean, there's so many videos of people, of postal workers who are outwardly saying that their hours are being cut, their benefits are being cut, like jobs are dropping left and right, their routes are getting shorter. It's happening. So the APWU represents over 200,000 employees and retirees of the United States Postal Service. So that's the other thing to think of, is that not that whatever is happening right now is also fucking with people's benefits. So like retirees of the Postal Service. And the Postal Service is the umbrella, but underneath it are clerks, maintenance workers, motor vehicle services, and support service divisions. So I think even the like DMV workers are underneath there. It also represents approximately 2,000 private sector mail workers. So PO boxes, that stuff. So it's just like the USPS is massive, and we don't give it enough credit. The other thing, which is like, if we were in a different time, but in 1970 was this thing called the Great Postal Strike. Workers grew increasingly frustrated with Congress's inaction. So on March 18th, 1970, thousands of New York City postal workers walked off the job in protest. Within days, they were joined by 200,000 others in 30 major cities. Mail service ground to a halt, and the plight of postal workers was finally brought to the public's attention, and they won. They literally, like, they won. And so they came back, and they're like, they were taken care of finally. Like their benefits, their hours, like their wages, everything was looked at, because they basically stopped mail, which at that time we didn't have anything else to send our mail. So it was almost, they had such leverage. And I only say this because like they don't have that type of leverage anymore. So they don't, if they did, they would all be striking right now, but they're not. And I think that's something important to remember, because I think it's like when you see something like this happen, people strike. But this is an extenuated circumstance, because we'll just go to FedEx, or we'll just go to UPS. Like people will go around it, and that's what's super scary for postal workers right now. And mark your calendars, because August 25th is a nationwide day of action for the USPS Postal Service. Yeah, that's my holy shit research, because I cannot believe how important these people are. They're an institution. I mean, no matter what, it's like, yeah, it's like it's such a direct reflection of who we are as a society right now, because we want everything fast and now, and like quicker and easier and whatever, yet we don't think of how we wouldn't be there without an umbrella company, and how we don't even notice that we need that everyday mail, that you wouldn't get your bills on time from FedEx. You wouldn't get your bills on time from UPS. You'd have to go to those places. You would not have it delivered to your door. But we're so consumed with fast fucking everything that I feel like we've like forgotten about them entirely. So next time your postal, your post person comes to your door, introduce yourself, because they're major. My guy David's the shit.
They're definitely an institution in our world. I mean, I don't know what other places use. I mean, like our world as like people, as American citizens, they absolutely are fundamental and hold a really important building block to our society. And I think that even with like the pandemic, like we all noticed that, you know, people are leaving like notes or just things like that. Obviously they are essential workers, and what's their slogan? Through rain, sleet, snow, whatever.
Wait, it's through
pandemic.
sleet, snow, and then they also said through racism and fascism. They added that to there, which I was like,
and a global pandemic. So they are the unsung heroes of, like I said, the fundamental building blocks of our society. But yeah, like you said, like even with getting prescriptions or just, you know, you think about like older people in senior homes or things like that who, you know, get like letters or cards, or, you know, those who live alone, perhaps their mail person is the only people that they get to see during the day, especially since we're all isolated now. And you know, it's just it's unfortunate. Like everything's just so unfortunate. And every time we hold these forums, I'm just like, on the next episode, like, of what's going to happen next. But we are ending and rounding up our hour here, which went so freaking fast. I swear our time here just goes by super fast. We have so much to share, and it's amazing, and I feel like we all come out knowing more. And although we are ballot for the people, we still reclaim our happy hour. And we still want to make sure that we are spending our dollars, our monies that we normally would be spending out at the bars or whatever. I know I would. So we want to funnel that money to different causes, or just even your attention. And for me, my Reclaim Our Happy Hour is going to be more so focused on just like this mail-in voting situation and really spreading the word. So mine isn't really associated with, you know, donating your money anywhere. It's about donating your attention, or just not even donating. Okay, I'm just not going to use that word anymore. More so putting your attention to this.
ooh, you froze.
What this
What Carmen is saying is that, oh no, did we lose Carmen? Okay, well, what Carmen was saying
means, if you are unable to go to the polling station, please, what? Go ahead. Oh, I did.
cut out for a minute, but came back strong.
Go ahead. Oh, I did. Go ahead. Oh, I did.
Ooh,
Video is working.
okay,
Can you hear me?
now.
You go ahead. You take the floor.
Well, I was gonna say, Reclaim Our Happy Hour, buy stamps. Everybody go out and buy some stamps. It supports the USPS system, and that's just like an easy way for you to also know that you have enough stamps for that mail-in ballot. So if everybody just goes out and buys stamps as soon as possible. And then I also know, please check in your local areas. A lot of different people have been giving water to homeless people because it's been so hot. I know SELAH, SELAH, which is an organization that helps the homeless. They have been literally just buying and giving out jugs of water. My friend, I'm going to put his information. He's working directly with them. So if you want to share his Venmo or send him a few bucks, you can. Greg Barris has been going out every day with jugs of water and just handing them out to anybody he can find who's homeless and going through this insane heat wave. So we all just got to do what we can.
Correct. And it's been so hot. So I'll definitely thank you for sharing that. I'm still frozen.
No, you're not. I'm making the face at it being hot.
Okay. It's so hot. It's so bad. So I'm happy to know that that's what's going on. You always have such great, even people that are directly connected to you that are doing things. So that's always awesome. And, you know, typically we end here and we have our discussions, but, you know, we're going to end it out right here, right now. We're going to save our discussions and our juicy hot topics and things we want to discuss offline for next week. I just think it's been such a crazy week for everybody. We've got the Democratic convention going on right now, so a lot of people are tuned in. There's really cool, important stuff that's going on. I think Kamala's on, and she just accepted her official, you know, vice president candidate situation. So that's happening right now. So yeah, so everybody head back to doing what you need to do. And we thank you so much for joining us weekly on Wednesdays. Ballot for the People, different name, same thing. Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.